You're listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This episode is sponsored by Ingram Micro Security. Strengthen your security practice. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Keri Roberts, and my guest today is Jacob White, the technology consultant at Ingram Micro. Welcome, Jacob. So excited you're here today.
Hey, thanks very much. Happy to be here.
We are chatting about risk-based vulnerability management today, and we are seeing more work from home happening now more than ever, and some companies are digging out old computers to give to employees, and they might not be thinking about if the security on those devices is up to date. So what would you suggest that they check and fix first, from kind of the most critical to the least?
Well, that's a great question. That's really what risk-based vulnerability management, or I'm just going to shorten that up to RBVM, right? Because that's kind of a mouthful of a term, but RBVM, that's really what it's all about. So, if you look at some of these older machines, right, they've got an old operating system that has been updated in a long time, something like older version of Windows maybe, and a variety of other software and application you've got on there that are designed for how you go about and do your job every day, right? We use these things all the time, things like Zoom or Teams and stuff like that. And if that machine has been running a long time, you might have some vulnerabilities on there that an attacker would use to gain access to your company via that machine. So RBVM tools and kind of an RBVM policy are designed to help organizations figure out, hey, what on here is the biggest issue, or the thing that an attacker might use most likely to gain access to this machine. Let's fix that stuff first, right? So it's all about kind of prioritizing what the biggest issues are down to the smallest issues to help you figure it out, because there's not really a stock answer to that. I can't come in and say it's this thing or that. It's really going to depend on an organization and what tools they've got installed.
And what would you say are some of the most common types of attacks that resulted in a compromise of some sort, whether it's inside a data center or cloud-based deployment?
So that I've got an actual direct answer to, right? So if we look at the Verizon 2019 DBIR report, which they publish every year, it's based on their incident response team and what they saw happen in the previous year by volume. And that report showed that phishing attacks and stolen corporate credentials were the most common ways that attackers gain access to an environment. So, those directly maybe are not something that you can deal with in patching, right? But that said, the close third and fourth place on that list were backdoors and via command and control servers that are directing the malware that's installed on that system. So, if we look away from that and kind of, say, all right, well, a phishing attack is probably going to install some malware on that computer, right? A virus or a worm or something. If we look at, backdoors and command and control servers, those do involve some sort of manipulation on the system. Those would be something that we'd look at in terms of vulnerability management, in terms of trying to figure out how we deal with those problems. So, hey, phishing attack, good email protection, you're going to want to have that in place. Corporate credential theft, we're going to think a lot about two-factor authentication. We're going to think about having single sign-on applications there, but everything else across the board, and that includes malware installed after a phishing attack, we're going to want to look at trying to reduce the vulnerabilities on a machine to try to lower that attack surface, make it harder for somebody to get into.
And Ingram Micro uses a company called Tenable to help reduce the risk of businesses of all different sizes. Can you talk about what that is and how it works?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot. Hey, man, can I buy one Tenable from you? And I'm like, well, Tenable's the company, right? Not the product itself, but Tenable does make, they're really exclusive in that vulnerability management, or what they like to call cyber exposure space. So the product line that they offer allows you to kind of scan across your environment and prioritize vulnerabilities that are on those machines based on how likely an attacker is going to use them, right? Kind of going back to that RBVM paradigm we were talking about. So what this does when you're a company is kind of gives you a picture of how squishy of a target you are to the bad guys, and that's where that cyber exposure term comes in. So the product that I discuss with customers pretty regularly, one that we use here at Ingram Micro, is called Tenable IO. So that's cloud-based, right? So you install scanners all across your environment. And hey, if you've got work from home, right, you can install agents on all those work from home devices as well. It collects information on those devices of what it scans and what it can see. It has an agent installed on, and it'll pull that vulnerability data, right? So it'll tell you something like, hey, I've got Windows installed and it's super out of date. You need to install all of these updates to patch these security problems on it. Or more common, and I know the security pros listening in will definitely agree with this. Hey, I've got some old versions of Adobe PDF or Flash Player or something like that. In the security biz, we see that a lot with kind of older Adobe products as they bring a lot of old vulnerabilities into play. So, those are two that I'm just picking on, but everybody has vulnerabilities on their software, and it's all about trying to figure out which of those are kind of the biggest issue, right? So the scanning product will let you figure that out. We'll give you a dashboard that prioritizes all of those vulnerabilities to help you figure out which ones are the most important first, and then give you a plan on how to fix them. That'll include giving you links to documentation on how to do that. There's also an API there that'll tie into third-party products to help you do some automation as well. We all know that IT budgets are limited. Finding security pros out in the wild is a big pain in the butt and is very difficult. There's about a 3-to-1 ratio of open jobs to qualified professionals. So we need things like software and platforms and API automation to help us kind of bridge the gap there in solving problems like vulnerability management.
Real quick, before we jump straight back into the episode today, we want to tell you about Ingram Micro Financial Solutions and how you can maximize your buying power and get to yes with your customers faster. For the last 9 years, Ingram Micro has been Channel Pro's reader's choice for best financing options. Put the power of our credit and leasing options to work for you. You can easily contact Financial Solutions at ingrammicro.com. All right, let's get back to the show.
That sounds amazing. And this can be used for any size and any type of business?
Yeah, so that's one of the cool things about Tenable as far as they go, right? There's a lot of competition out there in vulnerability management and cyber exposure, but I think the one thing that kind of sets Tenable apart is that they scale amazingly well, right? So if you're a small business and you've got maybe, 20, 30 employees, 20, 30 laptops, and then a couple, servers and switches and stuff like that. Your kind of common stuff you've got in an environment. You can handle that environment really well. And I think those are the customers that can benefit the most from an RBVM platform versus, your large multinational corporations with multiple physical locations, a lot of remote employees, right? You can take a Tenable IO platform. You can start out as that 30 employee business. And as you explode in scale and in size, you can scale that platform along with it, right? So there's no need to rip and replace and change your product or do anything like that. You can actually just buy more seats and buy more licensing. The product scales with your business.
That's great. Do you have any case studies you can share with us where using Tenable prevented security issues from happening?
Yeah, so Tenable's got a whole bunch on their website, and that includes some videos. So I highly encourage anybody listening, go check those out. I'm a video guy, I'm a visual learner, so I tend to get more out of that sort of thing. But I got a great example here from a major oil and gas company who was having trouble staying ahead of the threats facing their network. They're a big Fortune 500 company. So they chose not to share their name. So unfortunately, I can't share that. But I wanted to talk about this example because I think it is really representative about what you can do with automation in vulnerability management. So think of this great big company. They have an IT team that has to stay on top of all of these vulnerabilities, but it was a big nightmare for them just due to how big they were as a company, and their IT staff was limited. So they used ServiceNow as their ticketing system, and they were managing their IT tickets there. And using the Tenable integration between their platform and ServiceNow, they were able to automatically feed any vulnerabilities they found into an IT ticket in ServiceNow that would pop up on an IT manager's feed. It would also prioritize those tickets. And that's one of the API integrations that's available from Tenable. So what they were able to do is then automatically prioritize, figure out, okay, here are the things we need to fix first. And not only that, have a live ticket so they can manage their workflow as well. So you're seeing here how there's this connection between finding vulnerabilities, trying to understand your risk, and then giving your teams more time to figure out how to fix those problems. And more importantly, figure out what are the most important ones we got to take care of today. Think about this Fortune 500 company. If they're breached, it's not only bad for maybe their stock price, bad for their operations, but they're probably going to end up in the news, right? Nobody wants to be in the news these days. I certainly want to avoid being in the news. I don't know about anybody else here, but this is something that kind of affects them in multiple ways. It's not just kind of the boring, rote day-to-day of, hey, I got to patch stuff and that's a pain in the butt, but also, hey, we want to make sure that we are not somebody who ends up in the news.
Yeah, I think that is a really good and relevant point. When you think about the future, where do you see technology going within the next year?
Whew, that's a tough one. I want to try to be an oracle here and figure things out and give kind of a crazy innovative answer. But I think, being a security guy, I'm a little bit more grounded in my responses, right? So I think that if we look at like Internet of Things as being a buzzword, right? What does that really mean? I think that means that the things that we use every single day around us, everything's going to have a wireless radio in it, right? You can look, go to your local Best Buy or something like that. You can see refrigerators that are Wi-Fi enabled and have access to an internet browser on them, right? I think that kind of paradigm that we see is only going to spread everywhere, where everything's got a Wi-Fi radio on it. And how useful that is to us, I think, is questionable. But in the future, we're going to see more and more things become digitized and have these kind of internet-enabled capabilities to them. So the interesting thing there for me, and I think for other security professionals, is how do we keep that stuff safe, right? That's a difficult problem to tackle when you're basically creating this attack surface or things that hackers can go after that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So as far as the future goes, yeah, IoT is the way, man. I think that's the way it's going to go.
And if people want to learn more about what we talked about today, or they want to connect with you and have questions, where can they do that?
Yeah, so to get a hold of me personally, you can get me at jacob.white@ingrammicro.com. You can also find my profile on LinkedIn. I don't have a ton of social media, but LinkedIn is pretty much the only one. You can also go to our website for security that I maintain with some of my cohorts. That's securitylinecard.com. There you can view all of the security solutions we have available, as well as some interesting info on securing work from home solutions that is kind of relevant to our current era. And then for more information on risk-based vulnerability management, more information on how you can learn about some of the platforms that Tenable has, Tenable.com. They also have free trials of their products there. So if you're like, hey, I want to spin the wheels on this, you can get a 30-day free trial of Tenable.io. I think that's really great. I love using software hands-on first, because sometimes just even getting a demo is not enough for me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jacob, for, again, sharing your passion and knowledge for this topic and providing a solution for, again, businesses of all sizes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
If you like this episode or have a question, join the discussion on Twitter at Ingram TechSoul with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, hosted by Keri Roberts. This episode was sponsored by Ingram Micro Security. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production by Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton and Christine Fan. To not miss an episode, subscribe today in your favorite podcast platform.